Okay. We are live.
All right.
Okay. We can
All
start.
right.
We have people on board.
Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Leticia Remauro. I'm president and CEO of the Bond Agency, and candidate for borough president for Staten Island. But more importantly than anything, I'm a Staten Islander. I'm a small business owner, and I've been working with small business for the last 35 years here on Staten Island. And I'm joined today by my partner, George Passariello, who knows small business like nobody's business because he's owned so many of them. Hi, George.
Hey, Leticia.
Thanks for producing this for us. This is our Ask the Expert segment, and we're going to be doing it twice a week, on Mondays at 2 p.m. and on Fridays at 2 p.m. And we're going to bring to you information from Staten Islanders. And we're going to get the Staten Island perspective on what's going on, not only with COVID, but with small business and with all the issues of the day. And our second guest, because we did this segment before with Anthony Margarella, who did a great job in answering our questions about loans and taxes and what small business owners could do, and not only small business owners, but also residents could do to get their checks, their stimulus checks, and to protect themselves during this COVID time. So today our guest is a dear friend of mine. His name is Steve Margarella. He has been in business on Staten Island for over 45 years, and he's owned many, many businesses. And he's also had businesses in Florida. And so we can get a real perspective about the difference between doing business in New York and Florida. Steve, you might, if you're our age group, you might remember him for his roller skating rink in South Beach, or maybe his real estate development company, or now he's Margarella Asphalt and Concrete. And his business in Florida included a recovery facility for people with addiction. And so I'm not going to speak for him, but I just want to let you know that Steve and I were part of a business group over 35 years ago with, it was started by Bobby Catrona and Billy. And the big deal of the day was that we wanted to stop sales tax, and actually that was the impetus to stopping sales tax on clothing. And Governor Pataki, when he became governor, actually removed sales tax from clothing, and we enjoy that ever since. So without further ado, Steve, why don't you say hi to our group? Our group is thousands of people from across Staten Island.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank you and George for having me this afternoon. This is a real treat, and I'm hoping that we can make some headway and make some sense out of what's going on in New York City with this COVID mess.
Well, Steve, the title of today's show is Getting New York Back to Work. And as you see, we all volunteered to stop our business and to stop doing business, stop going to the office, fill out paperwork for loans and pay our employees and have them work from home, and change the way small business works. And it's been brutal on so many industries, especially the construction industry and the restaurant industry, and people that are businesses that are non-essential in the retail industry. So we wanted to originally talk about construction, but you said no, you wanted to go broader, and I know why, because you have a really great perspective of it. So why don't you tell us why you think we need to get back to work now?
So thank you. And before I do that, I want to say that that if anyone out there is elderly or is infirmed or has any comorbid conditions, meaning high blood pressure, hypertension, heart disease, anything else, please stay home. I'm not telling everybody to go out. I'm not telling everybody, crash the front door and go live your life. That is not what I'm saying. I'm probably going to repeat that a few times for people that turn in late. But that is important to note. The other thing that's important about that is that when you do a little bit of research, and I've done a lot, I have some documentation here with me, you'll find that the people that are otherwise healthy, that don't have hypertension, high blood pressure, heart disease, any kind of autoimmune deficiencies, those people stand a very small chance of becoming critically ill. However, those people that are elderly, I'm elderly, over 65, or have any of those other conditions, are very, very likely to become critically ill as a result of this illness. So I'm addressing this more to the people that can and should get out. My parents came here from the other side. I'm a first-generation Italian. And my parents were so proud to be Americans that we weren't allowed to speak Italian in the house. In fact, they didn't want us to learn Italian.
That's right, me too.
They were very proud of the fact that we were Americans. And my father took those oaths very seriously, and my mother. And so what happens when I got to be honest in that I get what happened in the early part of this pandemic. And I got the necessity for us to, hunker down and quarantine. I forget the politically correct phrase.
We're in isolation.
Yes.
Or we are,
Yeah, whatever. And I got that, and it kind of made sense to me for a few minutes. And it was going to be until we were going to shut down, until we got over the curve. We had to flatten the curve. Once we flattened the curve, we were good to go. And so, sure enough, we're coming up on the height of the curve. I sent my men home. 3 weeks. I said, do not come out of the house. If you need anything, call me. I'll bring it to you. I need you to stay healthy. We did that. And then the curve passes. But during those 3 weeks, I got to do some research and I got to do some thinking. And part of what I was really upset me was that I wanted to know where the priests and the mullahs and the rabbis were. That they told us that we couldn't practice our faith. See, we have no protection right now. When I say, as a result of this podcast, there's going to be repercussions and I'm going to have to pay a price for this. I got that and I'm fine with it. But the whole idea of religious institutions is they can speak for us, they can protect us, and there is no retribution against them. And they failed us. Every faith, every mullah, every rabbi, and every priest, every bishop, and every cardinal.
Well, explain why. Why did they fail us? Because they went along with it.
They went along with it. We have a Bill of Rights. And within reason, I get that we have to sometimes do some things that we wouldn't ordinarily do. I get it. But when you do a little research, even if you go to the CDC website, there is no reason why they couldn't have been holding services, doing it the way the CDC says you should do it.
Right, but 6 feet apart, wearing a mask, being socially distant.
They don't trust us. They don't trust us to be smart.
Well, the government never trusts the people. That's the problem, right?
Yeah, it's concerning that they assume immediately everybody on the planet is a full idiot. We know who to protect, right?
Exactly.
The elderly my grandma should not be going to Costco, and she won't.
And she won't. And the reality is, it's not a one size fits all solution. But the truth of the matter is, what they have done to this city and this state is unholy. Even the New York Times, as recently as last week, said that we are projected to lose 475,000 jobs and $9.7 billion in revenue for this city.
And that's if we open, in the summer. But I mean, we have a mayor who's talking about not opening some things until Broadway. I understand they're talking about opening in September. Now, how does New York City survive without Broadway? How does it survive without hotels? How does New York City survive without tourism?
So I want everybody that's listening to this to get a pen and a piece of paper, because I'm going to give you some dates and I'm going to give you some information. And I'm going to ask you to challenge everything that I tell you, I've researched it, but I need for you to research it yourself, because what's happening now is we got too many people that are just blindly following what Il Duce is saying in Manhattan and what the Mama Luke in Manhattan is telling everybody to do. It doesn't make sense. How can you tell me that I'm safer going into a Costco with 500 other people than I am to go into your office with one other person, or a retail shop that to buy a garment? How can you tell me that that's safer?
That's right. And they came out with guidelines, right? I mean, look, I said the same as you, and I was ridiculed for it because I was out having dinner at a restaurant with friends the night before the lockdown, and all the restaurants were told to close. And on my Facebook page, I had an argument. Why, that how dare I go out to restaurants? I'm going to be the problem. I'm going to spread the virus. But you know what? And I backed off and I said, you know what? For 2 weeks, okay, I get it. Let's everybody stay home. Let the healthcare workers get a handle on this, right? They had to figure out what we were up against because nobody was ever up against it before. And Italy wasn't doing great with it. So we needed to get our own protocols in order. And China wasn't talking. And so, okay, so for the benefit of the frontline workers and the healthcare workers, and so they can put their arms around it, I was willing to say, let's all stay home. Let's just see what we have to do. Let's follow the information coming out on television. Let's get the information out to the people. But Steve, you and I both know that information changes daily, right? How many people died because they couldn't see their doctor? Because maybe they were supposed to have knee surgery and they would have gone for pre-op testing for knee surgery, and the doctor might have caught that what they thought was allergies was really the virus, and they would have been tested. How many people never saw their doctor until they couldn't breathe anymore and wound up on a ventilator and dead?
Do you know that cancer care is all of the cancer care was considered non-essential?
That's right. That's right. Heart surgeries that were an emergency.
It was elective. If you had coronary artery disease or a heart attack, that was an elective surgery. Right. Let me tell you something. Everybody's telling this governor what a great job he did, and I am challenging everyone that is listening to this. I can't see how many people there are that are listening to this, but I'm going to challenge every single person that's listening to this to do a little bit of research, and they're going to find out what I found out. That only 1 in 9 person that goes on a ventilator lives.
That's right.
Do the math. One person in 9. And they were calling for thousands and thousands and thousands of ventilators.
Because they were following Italy. The people were dying in Italy, yet we used Italy as our protocol because we had no other information. We had to develop our own protocol. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Do you know how many people died in Florida, Leticia?
How many?
1,700.
Okay.
You know why?
Why? Because
that governor decided that he was going to protect the most vulnerable first. He sent all of his power, all of his resources to the nursing homes to take care of the elderly. Our governor, on the other hand, and God bless our nursing home workers, but they were not equipped to handle this. So what did our governor do? Our governor mandates that when we get people that are COVID positive, they had to take them in the nursing homes. They didn't have an option. They had to take them. So you take the sickest of the sick and he puts them with the most vulnerable of our citizens. And what do you have? You have over a 60% death rate in our nursing homes.
That's right. And when you think about it, Steve, you bring up a good point. The 1,700 people died in Florida. Yeah, Florida is where people go to retire, right? So the average age in Florida is much higher than the average age in New York City. And so think about that for a minute, everyone. What the point he's bringing up is, the governor was responding, but he was not responding in a thoughtful way. I think our biggest problem was we never really had a plan in New York, especially with with de Blasio and Cuomo fighting each other every step of the way. You remember Trump said, we're closing down the international airports. We're not going to allow anybody in from China. And de Blasio, Nancy Pelosi, AOC, the New York Times, and said he was a xenophobe. He was a bigot. You know, we didn't need to close down the airport. And the New York Times wrote an op-ed on it. And I remember when I saw it, I said, we're going to kill people. This is crazy. And de Blasio refused to close the schools. And the day he did, he acted as if, you know, his heart was being torn out. But we were sending our kids to school every day with this virus. And that meant that our teachers were exposed. Our principals were exposed. Our custodians were exposed. It's no wonder that the virus spread so quickly. But as soon as he decided to jump on board, then anybody that went to work was now a criminal and was now putting people at risk.
We lost 21,000 people in the city of New York. Interestingly enough, the average death rate in New York City from illness, accident, violent crime, suicide, drug overdose is between 145 and 200 a day. That's a generic average for death in New York City.
Yeah. Well,
why is everyone that's going to a funeral home today, and there's an article written by, I couldn't find it, I was going to quote it for you, that I read, written by a funeral director, that 100% of the cases that are going through the funeral homes are COVID related. This whole thing didn't make sense to me, and I'm going to tell you when it stopped making sense to me. It stopped making sense to me when Cuomo would go on TV every day saying, I need 10,000 more ventilators. I need 5,000 more of this. I need 10,000 more of that. We don't have this. We need that. We need the other thing. What does Trump do? Spends millions of dollars, sends him the shit. Goes to Jacob Javits, builds him a 3,000 bed hospital, right? So what ends up happening? 175 people get to use the ship. No one gets to, well, a few hundred people get to use Jacob Javits. But our hospitals are so overloaded that they couldn't help the citizens of New York.
right.
Well, why is that? If you built all of these thousands of beds, why could not the COVID people go to those tents and go to those beds and have the hospitals return to business as usual to the best of their ability? Why? Because the hospitals were getting paid a lot of money to admit the COVID people and to put them on respirators. Follow the money, follow the ideology. This has nothing to do with this virus. You want to know some statistics, Leticia? Let me tell you something. In 2017, 2018, you know how many people died from the flu?
How many?
61,000. Did anything shut down?
Nothing.
Nothing shut down, did it?
No. Well, but our healthcare professionals, and I support them 100%, our nursing home and healthcare professionals, our healthcare professionals will say something, and I agree with this, is that with the flu, it doesn't all happen all at one time. You know,
exactly right. This is a different kind of animal, and I get that. And I also get that the onset is much faster and much more violent. I completely agree.
Yeah.
But you set up for that. You don't shut a city down for that. You prepare for that, and you act, and the medical professionals would act appropriately and do what was necessary to take care of those sick people. It wouldn't shut the city down. It doesn't make any sense. I want everybody to stay on here because I'm going to give you two important dates. I'm going to give you a date for a rally, and I'm going to give you a date that we're going to reopen this city. The hell with the guy in Albany and the Mama Luke in Manhattan. I'm going to give you a date. We're going to throw out our doors open. The construction companies are going back to work. The retail stores are going to open their doors. The luncheonettes are all going to open up, and we're going to play COVID Jeopardy. You're going to give me the name of a business, and I'm going to tell you how to make it CDC safe by the CDC rules.
That's right.
We'll get to that. But the point is, follow the money.
Yeah.
Follow the ideology.
You're right. How many trillions of dollars are going to be spent now, you know, in healthcare, are going to be paid out to healthcare because of this virus? I mean, you know, I think that you're bringing up valid points, and they're points that nobody wants to talk about, right? Because that's politically insensitive. Now, the healthcare workers in the hospitals have done their part and they've saved us. Of course, yes, they have. But at the end of the day, they are still money-making facilities. And just as like banks and any other business, their job happens to be to keep us healthy. But how many, Steve? At the same time, how many doctors, and my adopted son, John Zafranalou, is a doctor who had to shut down his general practice because, he was ready. He was ready to test. He was ready to do whatever had to be done. But they were all told, stop what you're doing. Only hospitals and only in emergencies, and you can't see patients regularly. So dentists, so many of the medical profession were shut down, and they were shut down across the board. As a matter of fact, I was talking to somebody in Schenectady who was telling me that 300 healthcare workers were laid off, were furloughed, because the hospital shut down all elective surgery, including cancer and heart and all that. And so but they had no COVID cases. And I read yesterday that New Jersey had the same situation. So it's kind of crazy. It's like we put up a dam for regular physician visits. We stopped them from doing it, and we got prepared for this onslaught of COVID related medical necessity, and then we told everybody stay home, and so it didn't happen, thankfully. But the one place it did happen, and we all have to ask ourselves about this now, right? The people who really don't get out and mingle with many people are people in nursing homes. My son was in a nursing home for 3 years, and he was dependent on the workers there. So what the hell did we do in New York that the nursing homes were decimated by this virus, and the men and women of the greatest generation, the people that founded this country and had the greatest courage, were left without their loved ones, dying from a disease that should have never been able to get in there. And now the governor's backtracking on his original decision. And when you recall the original decision, what did he say? He said, you will accept COVID patients, and if you do not find a place for them, we will come in and we will take over and we will find a place for them. He threatened the nursing homes at that time. So if you're a nursing home owner who has to be under constant scrutiny and constant regulations, you're going to listen to what he says. And they weren't equipped. They didn't have enough PPE. They didn't have enough people there that understood the virus. We didn't understand the virus. So he infects them all, and now he reverses himself and says, okay, you're going to do X, Y, Z, and if you don't, we're going to do that. And he's threatening. He's threatening no information.
It gets better, because yesterday he came out and he said if they're not tooled up properly, they're going to lose their licenses.
Right.
They were never tooled up for this.
That's right. How come the inspectors didn't go in there and make sure that they had masks and gloves and understood the protocol? Why weren't they in there then at the beginning of all this? Because unfortunately, there was an emergency, and this is how, it was very nice. His press conferences, even I was taken in the beginning. Sounded great. He was giving a lot of information, a lot of data, a lot of stats. But you know what? All of those statistics wound up being incorrect. And you have to say to yourself now, look, I had it. I had the virus. I had it. My husband had it. My daughters had it. My grandson had it. My friends had it. Do you know that all of us experience different symptoms? All of us. So this virus isn't one size fits all.
No, it's not.
I had the horrible cough, but I didn't have the fevers. My husband had the fevers and the fatigue. My daughter had the fatigue and the low-grade fevers. We all experienced it differently. So how the newscasters and the governor in his press conference kept telling us, look, this is what you got, this is what you got, this is what it is, blah, 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 blah. And people were missing it, so we didn't know enough.
Did you see the latest? Fauci came out and said wearing face masks is not a good idea. You shouldn't wear face masks.
I saw that.
So it's at the end of the day, it's ideological and it's financial. Enough. We got the point. We're not 4 years old. In Sweden, everybody terrorized Sweden because they did a modified. I get it. It's a different society. It's a closed society. It's only 12 million people. All right. Yeah. everybody got on Sweden because Sweden decided not to do a shutdown. They were going to save their economy. They made complete sense to me. They knew there was going to be X amount of deaths.
Of course.
So if we know that going in, let's bite the bullet and not kill our economy in the process. And so what ends up happening 2 months later, Sweden now is the golden child of that part of the world because they've developed herd immunity. Their economy is still intact, and their death rate is no higher than anybody else's.
Well, you said it, Steve. We had a conversation before you became a guest on the show, and why don't you talk to me about the analogy you used with Auschwitz? And
this is true, and I hate doing this because it's people just turn off when you talk about that. But I remember being a kid in school, and I remember learning about the Holocaust, and I'm saying, I don't understand. Why did all of these people just walk to the boxcars? Why didn't they fight? Why did they just allow this to occur? So a couple of weeks ago, I'm thinking to myself, and I'm saying a very simple reason, for the same reason we're doing what we're doing. They were threatened. As we are being threatened, we're being threatened economically. I went to work today and I had DOT pull up on my job. Jury's still out as to how big the fine's going to be. One of my friends said he got hit for $10,000 because he decided to go to work because he can't not work, right? He has to work. And so I'm thinking to myself, we, the proudest, most powerful country in the world, are doing exactly what they did. We're afraid of the repercussions. Why? Because we don't have anybody standing up for us the way the leaders of faith should be standing up for us, because we are going to have financial repercussions. If you open up your luncheonette or she opens up her dress shop, she's going to get a visit and get a fine. Why? Because the Mamaluke in Manhattan decided to turn everybody into rats. He's got everybody turning on everybody else. You make a phone call and you could dime somebody out so that they can get a fine. You know what they did that? Stalin did that. Stalin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hitler did that. So you would rat on your Jewish neighbor. Stalin did that in case you spoke against his government. This is not the United States. What is wrong with these people? And everybody follows them. They vote for these idiots.
Wow.
It's beyond my comprehension. I'm sorry, I'm raising my voice.
Listen, that's the whole thing.
It's beyond my comprehension that everybody hasn't said, and I'm saying it, next Monday, go back to work. Open your doors. The hell with these idiots. They never earned a paycheck. They never went to work. They never had to make a payroll. All they ever done was sat on their fat asses and collected money from us that we pay taxes with.
That's right. And they have now, the city council and the mayor have done everything in their power over the last several years to make it impossible for small business to succeed and survive in New York City. And, my biggest concern is who's going to want to stay here, right? I mean, they're already our partners in business, right? We're paying 40% out in taxes of what we earn. They're already our partners. And it's unbelievable that you have people talking about employees as if they are in Oliver Twist, that they are, in rags and being underpaid and being beat with whips. Business owners. You've owned several businesses. I've owned two. When I started my businesses, both my restaurant and the Von agency, I did it. I risked everything I had. I cashed in my retirement when I opened the Von agency. I second mortgaged my house when I opened Audition Supper Club. And I invested everything in those businesses because I believed I could provide a service, and I was employing people. I was feeding people. I was putting money in their pocket. They were sending their kids to college. That's what I did as a business owner. And guess what? When a month came in and something happened where I couldn't make payroll, instead of not making payroll, I didn't feed my family because I was the business owner and the buck stopped with me. So I put my pay back a couple of weeks so that I could pay my employees, because that's what business owners do. Now you take a look at the city council. You look at the mayor. You look at the comptroller. You look at the public advocate. Look at all the state legislators and the governor, and even look at Congress, both the Senate and the House. You tell me what percentage of them ever created a job, ever put money in somebody else's pocket in a legal fashion and not a corrupt fashion, and actually created jobs and fed the economy. The percentage is so minute, it's ridiculous. But yet they expect us to pay our property taxes, pay our commercial rent taxes, pay our payroll taxes, pay our you name it, there's a tax for it. Now we have minimum wage that we were mandated to pay. So what do? We have to hike the prices of everything because now they want $15 to be the minimum wage. Now Corey Johnson's talking about combat pay for people who go back to employees that go back to work in a post-COVID world. I'm sorry. We created a situation where we gave you a job and an opportunity to have a career, and somehow or another we're the bad guys. How is this possible? And how do we as New York City residents continue over and over and over again to vote for people who want to take the power from small business owners and take the incentive from small business owners and take the heart and soul from small business owners and say, you are no longer any good. We're going to protect, quote unquote, your employees because you are a bunch of bastards. You're money hungry bastards. And we are not going to help you in New York City.
And now I have to go pick up my paycheck. Now I'm going to go pick up my paycheck. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The paycheck that you, the small business community, created jobs to employ employees to pay the taxes so that I, Mr. Mayor, can get my paycheck and pay everybody else. Yeah. And I think that the irony of all this is after he gave his wife several positions, where the first position was mental health, she loses $850,000. The second was the schools, right? Trying to make world-class schools in neighborhoods where they were failing. Another $850,000. So she loses $1.7 billion, and he rewards her by making her the head of the statue committee, right? The women, and then she turns her back on Mother Teresa. I mean, the largest Catholic population in the world in New York City, and Mother Teresa can't have a statue. And now she's going to be the sheriff for fairness and equity in New York City. Are you kidding me? We didn't elect her. What qualifications does she have to oversee any of these budgets? None. But New York City residents vote for them because they're the right party. They're the party that established Tammany Hall and who took over New York. So if you are any other party, you're no good.
Do you know? Dawn's making a point. Do you know that I have friends whose men won't come back to work because they're getting paid more to stay home?
Yeah, Dawn Marie's on, and Dawn Marie just said they're getting extra $600.
Imagine a restaurant.
And I know contractors whose men will not come back to work.
Sure.
Yeah, they need to put a stopgap bill in place. They need to say, you know what, get back to work. We're going to cut your $600 to $300 while you're working. That's they have to do something along those lines, or restaurants are done for. Restaurants are going to get hurt bad.
Leticia, you ever hear of the law of unintended consequences?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. So let's look at what's going to happen as a result of these several months that people have been locked down. Let's look at the women that have been trapped at home with abusive husbands. Let's look at people that have gotten into the habit. It takes 90 days to create a habit, that have gotten into the habit of ordering from Amazon. Let's look at the people that have stopped going to restaurants. Let's look at the people, all of those tens of thousands of office workers that are working from home. So what happens now?
Yeah.
I don't have to pay $10,000 a month rent because I just found out that my 40 employees do just as well from home.
That's
So now what
right.
happens to that real
Thank
estate
you,
space?
Zoom. Thank you, Slack. Buy stock in those companies.
And,
What
and,
happens
and,
to that real estate space? It goes vacant. What
and
happens to all of those restaurants?
it makes
They're
the
gone
PPP
because
loan.
everybody's using takeout now.
It makes that PPE loan impossible to meet because now I'm a restaurant. I got a check to cover my payroll for $60,000 that I will get back if I hire people and they don't want to come back.
Right. That's right. But
There's
even
no
worse.
money. Even if you get the PPE, that's for your employees. What do you get? 7% of that money doesn't cover 1 month's rent.
That's right. That's right. But the problem now let's talk about, and I think that this is important because there's a whole segment of population right now. And you know, but Steve, George, we're all volunteers, right? We all belong to different groups. Our whole, you know, when things like this happen, you know, we were out there at Sandy. We're always running towards it because we volunteer. So my only opportunity to volunteer in this, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, is I can cook. So I've been cooking for Project Hospitality. And today I went down and I bagged groceries for senior citizens. You know, there are people out there right now that can't eat. And let me tell you why. Because there is a whole population that lives in the shadows. There are people who have come from other countries that are working off the books because employers want to pay off the books. They belong to the restaurant industry. They belong to the construction industry. They're basically in every industry. Now, what happened to them? What happened to them is they never were on the books. So for them, unemployment is not an option, right? For the employer who thought that they were getting over by working off the books, that employer now can't even put in a PPP loan because he doesn't have employees on the books, or she doesn't have employees on the books. So that population, the small business owner that had people working off the books and the people that were working off the books right now are left with nothing. And to make matters worse, there's plenty of small business owners that still didn't understand, even after we did our great podcast and 2,000 people saw it, they still didn't understand how to file the PPP loan because that kept changing too, right? That was a moving target too. So there are people out there that haven't gotten their stimulus check because they don't file income taxes. There are people out there that haven't gotten their unemployment check because they were not on the books. There are people that can't ever put in for a loan. Then there are the people that had everything legitimate. And guess what? We ran out of money.
What about the dead people that got the check? Like my father got his check. He died 4 years ago. What kind of corruption is going to go down with that?
It's not funny. It's funny. But I want to, if anybody's listening to this podcast, please, please, please write down December, listen to me. May 16th is a Saturday. May 18th is back to work. If you're not on my Facebook page, and I got a feeling I'm going to get banged out on my Facebook page, go to my construction company, Margarella Asphalt and Concrete. I want to create an uprising. I want to revolt. I want us to take back our freedoms, and I want us to take back our city. Enough listening to these people that have no frame of reference for anything that any of you have had to go through. They have always lived off the dole of people like you and me that created businesses, that paid taxes so that these people could suck off the tit of the city of New York. Enough. I'm done. I want to have a revolt in this city. I want to see every restaurant open. I want to see every construction company back to work. I don't care about fines. I don't care about anything else. We'll find lawyers that will represent us for free. Do it. December, listen to me. May 18th. May 18th.
No December.
Well, he's saying December to throw the feds and the government people off the track, right? So,
Il Duce, every time Il Duce says he's going to do something, it always ends up, first it was April, then it was April 15th, then it was May 1st, then it's May 15th. Now he's talking June, then he's talking July. Enough!
So Steve, so let's talk a little bit. I mean, you have a good grasp of Florida and what Florida's doing, because you have property down there, you spend a lot of time down there. So talk to us about, even pre-COVID, right? Because we were seeing socialism starting to creep in to New York City pre-COVID. It started with, the minimum wage, and then the sick leave, and then all the different layers of regulations that go on when it comes to small business, but no regulations at all to protect us about unscrupulous employees or any of that stuff. And by the way, as a sidebar for small business owners, now if you didn't know it, Speaker Johnson is talking about putting a set of rules together that small business owners have to meet in order to protect their employees from COVID. Somehow or another, it's become our problem. The flu is not our problem, right? If people get the flu, they go home, you get 2 weeks sick, and, we handle it. But if people get COVID now, they're setting it up for lawsuits so that the 7 million lawyers that, reside in New York City can have some income too. So, check out Corey Johnson. Watch what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. Don't just listen to television. Don't just watch the newspaper. You've got to go on the city websites, because all of these things have to be put out as documents before they vote on them. The things that have been passed, like, I'm just going to divert for a minute. Recently, we saw our borough president and myself and others having a fight with the mayor because he closed Front Street. Now, let me tell you why that was such a problem. Because there's only one residential building on Front Street, and that's Irby. There is a waterfront esplanade that costs many $1 million to create, and the people living in Irby have the ability to access the waterfront esplanade. There are several businesses in Irby. There's Sepe, there's Pastavino, and Eggers is there too, but I think that they moved all their operations.
Restaurant opening, Navy Pier.
And then on Front Street there's Styland auto body shop, and they have several different types of automotive repair, auto body, and painting down there. So now the mayor closes this street, and the intention of the mayor was to have people in low income areas with high density to have open space. Now, nobody was spoken to. The Staten Island Downtown Alliance wasn't asked. The restaurants, the businesses there weren't asked. They just came in the middle of the night and closed the streets down. Nobody is using the streets because they have a waterfront esplanade. But in the meanwhile, if you're driving down that street, where by the way, there's very limited traffic in that area because it's a new area and not a lot of people know about it. So that was one of the hurdles that the businesses in that area had to overcome, getting people to know that they were there. So now you drive down Front Street and you see a police barricade and you have no idea why, because there's no signs. And if you're not watching the news and reading every single article in the newspaper, you have no idea why he's closing these streets. So you go around best you can, and you never come back again because you don't know how long that diversion is, what length it's closed. Why do I bring this up? Because that was done with the approval of the city council. We have representatives here on Staten Island who made excuses. Oh, I said this, I said that. No, it was done in a freaking vacuum because why ever the mayor decides that one size fits all. It's funny. He decides one size fits all when closing the streets. But when it comes to property taxes or public transportation or funding, Staten Island doesn't get the same size as Brooklyn or as Bronx or Manhattan or Queens. But it's one size fits all when it's detrimental. So, people, you have to go on the New York City websites. You have to take a look at what's going on there. You have to get your information from the source. Do not just believe what people tell you, including your elected officials. There's no real leadership here because there's no real information. And you have to spend day and night looking for it if you want to get it. So, Steve, I know you want to say something.
So a couple of things. First of all, if the only thing you do is watch mainstream, you need help. You need to go out. You need to look for your own information. Consider the sources of the information that you're reading. Okay, number one. Number two, you mentioned Florida. We talked about the law of unintended consequences. I called my real estate broker last week, let her know what was going on with me and some other things. And and just generally keep in touch. And I said, you know, how's it going down there? Because I'm figuring out with the market tank and all those old people. She says, doing great. I said, excuse me? I said, what about? She says, no, we're working. She says, you wouldn't, aside from the restaurants and the bars being closed, you know, if you want a haircut, they come to your house. You really wouldn't even notice anything was going on, except that there's less traffic. So I said, really? I said, well, up here they're doing these virtual showing. Oh no, she says, we're going, everybody's showing their houses. We're taking people. It's a non-issue, Stephen. She said, I said, how busy are you? She says, I'm ridiculously busy. She says, my phone rings all day long with people from New York and New Jersey.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about the law of unintended consequences, in order for this city to be great, it needs to have a great tax base. It doesn't need to have an egalitarian mayor that wants to make sure that everybody gets treated properly, or a city council that's 53 members, that 45 of them are community organizers. What you need is a tax base. You can't have a great city without a great tax base. You have to pay for those firemen and those policemen that are putting their lives on the line every day. You have to pay for all of those services. And guess what? We're not going to be here.
Right.
You know, the other contractor, my trade happens to be very heavy in machinery. We're very machinery intensive. Those machines cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. They have to be paid for. If you don't pay for them, they take them away from you.
Yep.
So all of the guys that are in my business that can't work, that bought new machines, that have notes on machines and dump trucks and paving machines and rollers and skid steers and excavators, they have to work. They have to feed their men, and they got to keep their businesses alive. The PPE did nothing to help me. I mean, it might have paid a month's rent. Well, what about my insurance? What about this? What about that? What about the other thing? And they want us to stay home. Why? Why? All we do is contribute to this city.
Yeah.
I had the guy that came and stopped my job today. I said, listen, I got to ask you a question. I asked Steve Matteo on his Facebook page. I said, I'm having a little trouble finding out exactly what I can and I can't do. So this guy shows up on a job today. He's going to give me a summons, and I'm always very respectful and nice. These guys are just doing their jobs. You know, I really don't have a beef with them. But I said to the guy, I said, you know, I got to pull a permit because I got to do 2 streets in Brooklyn next week. But it's not emergency work. I'm just milling and paving. And I don't want to get out there and then find out that I'm going to get fined for working because it's not emergency. I'm telling you, it's not emergency work. So the guy looked at me, he said, I don't know. You don't know. You're the guy that's going to give me the summons.
That's right.
How do you not know? So, you know, it's so convoluted, so stupid, and so backwards that we have to take back. We have to do what they did in the 18th century, and we got to say enough is enough is enough. We're going back to work. You don't want to go to work, you stay home. And God forbid, please, 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 if you have any comorbidity, if you have any other infections, you're immune compromised, stay home. Please, please stay home.
Protect yourself. At the end of the day, we need to protect ourselves.
You need to protect yourself. And if you're an owner and you have a man that's not comfortable, there cannot be retribution for that man. Absolutely. He has a right to stay home, and he has a right to worry about his family.
I agree. Yeah.
And you have to save his job.
Absolutely.
There's no maybes about that.
Absolutely. We're, as business owners, we are responsible. Our employees, we are only as good as our employees. Yeah. Our employees make us look good. Go ahead. I'm going to let you finish that thought. And I want to spend the last 10 minutes talking a little bit specifically about the construction industry. But go ahead, Steve.
So before we get off that subject, I want to play COVID Jeopardy. I want you and George to pick a business. And I'm going to tell you how that business can go back to work.
George, you go first.
Restaurants.
Perfect. CDC, restaurants. Consistently clean the door handles after someone sits down, after someone gets up from a table. Completely wipe down the chairs and the tables. Your staff is wearing gloves that are changed frequently. Your staff is wearing masks. After they look at the menus go back to the station. They get wiped down with a mixture of 5 tablespoons of Clorox to 1 gallon of water, sprayed down and wiped down. Silverware naturally goes in and is sterilized. When those people leave, anything that they have touched or handled, which you would normally do, gets wiped down. Next.
Wait, was that your dog providing sound effects?
I thought it was
Benny, I got
in the back.
I wasn't paying attention. Yeah, Benny's here.
Yeah, Steve,
Okay.
Benny's with me.
Home improvement. Home improvement.
Home improvement. So we're gonna go. I'm coming into your house. I'm a home improvement contractor. I'm gonna have a discussion with you before I come into your home. We're gonna isolate the areas that I'm gonna work in. My crew is gonna come in before we start work. We're gonna wipe those areas down. We're gonna segregate those areas. My crew is gonna come in. My crew is gonna have gloves and masks. When we're done at the end of the day, we're gonna wipe down whatever work that we've done, clean up appropriately, and leave in better, more sanitary condition than it was before we got there.
All right. Salons and barbershops from Angela Giovinazzo.
Perfect. And this is the one that really upsets me. And I didn't get into the social distancing in the restaurants, so you got to forgive me. I left out the social distancing in the restaurants.
Separate the tables a little bit, sure.
Okay? No more than 50% occupancy for the next month or two. That said, hair salons. This is, okay, I'm not going to get crazy. I'm going to behave. Hair salons. Naturally, wipe down all the hardware, wipe down the countertops, wipe down the chairs after somebody gets up. Social distance your chairs. Not everybody sits next to each other. We leave a chair in between, okay? We alternate. Maybe you got 10 people on staff. We alternate them 5 days and 5 days on, 5 days off, so that Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, you'll have different staff working. Same solution of Clorox, spray down all your walls, spray down all your mirrors, spray down all your chairs, spray down everything they touch. You try to use as much electronic money as possible, and you ask people, please, if you can, please pay for this with a credit card. Wipe the credit card down. Don't be afraid. You're only helping your neighbor.
All right. Eddie Jonas wants to know, what about churches and group gatherings?
Perfect. Hey, Eddie. Eddie knows about this. So Eddie's a ringer, because Eddie has been doing this all along, and Eddie knows exactly how to do it. And God bless him for that. Because
wait, did you just out Eddie for be doing it all along?
No. He has a facility. No, this is true. He has a facility, and as a result of his tax status, they've been able to do this. And they social distance. They do masks. They do cleanup. They do everything, and he's doing a great job.
Excellent. And so, what's his facility?
It's a recovery-based facility.
Oh, okay, got it. But he asked about churches and group gatherings. So what are we doing? Yeah.
Churches would probably follow the same CDC guidelines. Where it gets a little dicey is when the priest wants to give you the host. You take it in your own hand. But at the end of the day, you have pews in a church. And the same way that they would only let 1 or 2 people into a Costco at a time, or 10 people into a Walgreens, and somebody would stand at the door. We're only going, if that church holds 150 people, only 75 are getting in. Maybe you'll have to have twice as many masses. Priest got to work a little harder. That's fine. Everything gets wiped down. Everything gets, and you go on with your life.
You're talking about common sense here. I mean, that's the one thing that again, the government doesn't trust us to do. The media has set up the narrative of what we're up to as if what you're saying is you want to kill people, Steve. That's the media's setup of this whole thing. If you talk about going back You're killing someone's grandmother. We are holding hostage 97% of the population for 3% of the population. When with common sense and caution, we can protect those people and go back to work.
I don't trust anything I see. I research everything I see. So last week I'm on Facebook and there's a meme and it has a map of the states that voted for Trump and then a map of the states that have the most draconian shutdown laws. And there was an overlay. And I was like, I'm going to look this up. True to form. It wasn't exact. There was a few states, Louisiana, Mississippi, a couple of other states that did vote for Trump that still had very draconian laws. But for the most part, the states that came out hardest against the individual, hardest against business, were all the states that voted against Trump. Now, you could call that a coincidence, and you could call me whatever you want. I'm an independent, so knock yourself out. I got no axe to grind on this. But the reality of it is, this is economically and ideologically driven, okay? I am telling you, 66% of the people that were admitted to the hospital for 3 days last week came from home.
Came from home, that's right.
Came from home.
Yeah. So let's just spend a few seconds on a couple of things that are driving me crazy in this city that, absolutely make no sense. Let's talk about the fact that New York City is trying to reduce traffic and reduce pollution in the environment. Yet we have these ridiculous overweight permit rules about trucks carrying only half a load to get, so we have to go 2-3 trips. We jamming up the traffic in the New York City streets, and we are running all these trips are putting tons of pollution into the air, but yet we want to talk about how our planet needs to go green and what's the cost to the trucking companies, Steve? What happens if they find that you're overweight, and how is it that they can manage to figure out how to give everybody tickets when they need to generate money, but they can't figure out where to find the money to pay the cops and the firemen and the teachers that are our freaking frontline workers right now? You tell me, Steve.
It's a scam. And let me explain the scam to you. Back in the 80s, dump trucks generally are designed to carry between 80 and 90,000 pounds, 76,000, 78, 80,000 pounds, up to 90,000 pounds. Back in the 80s, the city of New York decided in its infinite wisdom that it was going to lower the legal, Benny.
Every time he hears anything about de Blasio, he squints his toy.
In their infinite wisdom, they were going to lower the legal weight of a vehicle to 52,000 pounds. And then what they were going to do is they were going to offer overweight permits so they could generate some money, and they would make these dump truck owners pay so that they could run full loads, as you put it. Except what happened was, Con Edison got the first, I think, 7,000 permits or something like that, and they all got eaten up. And the privateers, the small mom and pops like me, there was none left. So now you're in business, you want to go into business, you want to buy a dump truck, you want to be a paving contractor, you want to do sewer work, whatever you want to do, you want to buy a dump truck. So now you go to buy an overweight permit, you can't buy one. In order for me to get an overweight permit, I have to go find somebody that's going out of business, buy his corporation, buy all his old iron, buy all his old trucks, and then I can get his overweight permit to put on my trucks.
Almost like the medallion, right?
Exactly. That's what it was supposed to be. But it didn't work because people just kept buying dump trucks and they weren't enforcing it, so guys just kept buying dump trucks. So every day, every dump truck that you see, that owner goes to work like a criminal every day because every day he knows that he can get fines up to $10,000 a truck. And you can't be legal. The way they weigh the trucks, the way they axle weigh the vehicles, you cannot possibly be legal. So it's kind of like the speed cameras that they put to protect the schools, right? Except they're on from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night because that's when kids go to school, right?
And they're on right now, and there is no school.
And there
there's
is
not
no
gonna be any
school. There is no school, but they still got they want to protect the kids that aren't in school, I guess, right?
Right.
So the
Right.
cameras, it's the same thing. It's another scam. It's another way to put their hand in your pocket because you earn more money than the guy that sits home and collects a check, that gets his rent paid, that gets food stamps, that gets everything else. They can abuse you to get more money out of you because they can't get more money out of him.
Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about too is I want to close with this is here are my pet peeves. For what's going on right now. Steve touched on it. We've got speed and red light cameras on right now, even though schools are out. And guess what? They're generating more money than ever. Another money grab. We're being forced to pay our property taxes when the government is telling us all, stay home, you can't work, but oh, by the way, if you don't pay your property taxes, we're going to put a lien against your property and the city of New York is going to take it. There has been no relief on property taxes right now during COVID-19. Driving me crazy. More just goes to show you that the city of New York does not care about people. It cares about tax. It cares about money. They're closing streets where they don't need to be closed. They're hurting businesses that are already hurting, but they're not helping the people that are living in densely populated area like Stapleton Houses or Mariners Harbor projects. The street, they need people living in tall apartment buildings need the streets closed around their apartment buildings, not a mile away. And the last thing is we have a scaffold law in the state of New York. Get this for anybody that doesn't know it. If you are developing a property that's more than 6 feet tall, and there's an accident with a worker or anybody that falls off a ladder or anything, whether they're supposed to be there or not, that worker gets to sue the building owner, not their employer, the building owner, for the fall. Now, the building owner has to take insurance for that. It's called Labor Law 240. Building owner has to take insurance for that. Only in the state of New York, nowhere else. Anywhere else that had this law has already repealed it because it has been proven by a study in the Rockefeller Institute that because the owners have to pay so much money in insurance, because not every company will underwrite it, that the sites have become less safe. And so what winds up happening is the employees are less safe, and the majority of the money that's associated with the cost of this law goes to lawyers and insurance companies, with the actual person who may have gotten hurt getting a pittance of this money. Ladies and gentlemen, your government is no longer working for you. You have become a slave to your government, and we're going willingly. We're doing it willingly. They're not coming and rounding us up. We're walking into those train cars. And if we don't stop it now, there will be nothing left of this country. Steve Margarella, what's the date of the rally and where is it?
I'm holding off on the location right now. I have it, but I'm not going to post it yet. It's this Saturday, and I am telling you, on Monday, we're going to make this go viral. The city of New York is going to open up. I want you to take back your freedom. I want you to stand up to the authority, and I want you to tell them that it's not okay, that you're going to go to work. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead.
That's it. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, a blank. It doesn't matter. You're an American citizen, goddammit. Right. Time to act like one. That's Steve, right. My mother says you have a polar bear living in your house. And on that note, I know we went over 3 minutes, 49 seconds. People, I thank you very much for tuning in. On Friday, 2 o'clock, we're going to have Mario Gallucci Law Firm. We're going to be talking about Shelley Luther. She was the hairdresser that got arrested for opening her shop in Dallas, Texas. He's going to give us some perspective of it. Please sign on, ask questions of everybody. Talk to your elected officials and tell them we've had enough. Go back to work.
Thank you.
God bless America and God bless New York.
Amen.